Why don't we kick this off, and we'll do some quick introductions. I'm going to be the panel moderator, host, Hannu Lindberg from DPR Construction, visiting from Atlanta, Georgia. And we will do an introduction of who are the panelists here, and we'll kind of let everybody go through and give a little bit quick bio of their background. Obviously, the topic here today is going to be talking about really the utilization of robotics and construction technology, field automation in the field, and how can we improve labor shortages and address some of the productivity issues we're facing as an industry. Some practical examples, hopefully, today for you from some of these experts here. And we'll start off here with doing an introduction. Derrick, go ahead.
Yeah, so Derrick Morse, founder and CEO of Rugged Robotics. Quick 30-second intro. Worked with the tools when I was younger, installing sprinkler pipe. I'm a registered PE, spent 7-8 years practicing engineering on large commercial construction projects. Went back to school for my MBA and then landed in South Korea working at Samsung, where I got to see some cool technology. When I repatriated back to the US, wanted to get back into the construction sector, was looking for a job, consistently heard labor shortages are our primary pain point in the industry, and tried to combine my construction experience with the technology I saw at Samsung to build a solution that works well in the field.
Justin, go ahead.
Yeah. Justin Rodgers, business developer for robotics in Hilti, Canada. I've been with Hilti for 13 years, worked my way up through the company itself. Very similar. Once I got into marketing, saw the real labor shortage in the investment Hilti was making into robotics. Wanted to be a part of it. Visa status ended in the US, so they had to find something for me back in Canada, and I was lucky enough to work into this, where I was on the back end of it in terms of the marketing piece for the last 3 years for the North American robotics business. And now actually a Canadian in Canada back to try to get the business to grow here the way we've had success with companies like DPR and a few others in the US. Thanks, everybody.
Danielle Proctor, President and CEO of Advanced Construction Robotics. A little bit of a unique path to get here. Started out in the software database data analytic world. Back in the boom of when the web and the cloud was just being developed. I'm dating myself a bit. From there, I moved into the construction industry and actually I was a specialty sub minority contractor for 16 years. Started out in caissons, foundation work, structural sub, and then moved into heavy steel doing girder lift, precast concrete, and bridge for the heavy highway. Sold that company. Every day was a little bit of a Saturday, semi-retired for a bit and played a lot of golf, which I came along the funding raise for Advanced Construction Robotics, where I was one of the original investors. Kept on going to the meetings. The curve was, why isn't this getting adopted? Why can't we get this through to the contractors? And our owner, founder, and funder, Steve Mock, asked me to come on board to get Advanced Construction Robotics out to the world. So a fun opportunity to bring my previous life of software and technology, merge it with construction, and I get to play with robots out on the bridges.
Great. Okay, thank you for the introductions, panel. We'll got some prepared questions for the panel today, and then we'll open it up for some questions from the audience as well, if that's okay. So we're going to kick it off. Obviously, welcome to the panel here today, and thank you for coming and joining us. We want to maybe just kind of talk a little bit about initially what got you into the industry and specifically into robotics, and what specific problems are your companies trying to tackle related to our industry today. And we'll maybe start with Derrick and then Danielle, if you don't mind giving us some more context from your perspective.
Thank you. Great question. So I kind of touched on it in my intro. When I landed in Houston, was talking to a lot of people in the industry, and everyone was consistently facing the challenge of an acute labor shortage, not being able to hire the people that they needed, not seeing the skill levels and capabilities that they wanted, and struggling to deliver projects on the timelines that they wanted to. So I stood up Rugged Robotics, I guess, with a high-level goal of augmenting the existing construction workforce to help them do their jobs more efficiently, more effectively. And more specifically, we're tackling the challenge of field layout. So translating a digital design into the real world so that contractors can install their systems and equipment where it's intended to go. Right now, that process is done individually by each trade. They use different data sources. Some of them are still using paper documents. Who knows when they were printed? They're using different methodologies and technologies to do their layout. So it's fragmented and just broken. And our solution is an autonomous wheeled rover that drives across unfinished concrete floors and prints a fully coordinated design. If it's in the model, if we can print it, we can print almost everything. And the value proposition is really to not only compress that layout task, but also bring so much more information in such an accurate fashion that it compresses the installation timeline as well, putting all the information that installers need right at their fingertips. So the specific problem that we're tackling is field layout and trying to do that as effectively as we can.
Great. Danielle, what does your
I mean,
company specifically do?
huh?
Yeah, just explain a little bit what problem. You're tackling a little bit more from, I think, a infrastructure, horizontal construction.
Yep. So not sure if just brief overview of what we do provide. We are currently in the horizontal rebar bridge deck installation. We do rebar. Anybody here actually ever worked with rebar? Yeah. Yeah. Love it, right? Greatest jobs in the world. So if you haven't seen rebar getting installed, very long, very actually flexible pieces of steel that are getting laid down prior to the concrete reinforcement process being completed. Once you lay it down, you then have to go in and tie all the intersections. And you have to do, majority of current processes are done by hand. Some of them do it by tie guns. So our robotic solutions, we currently have a fleet of 10 that go out onto the bridges. And we have a robot that will lift, carry, and place 5,000-pound bundles of rebar autonomously at a specified distance. And then we have a robot that comes up behind it, and I was getting zoomed, but it's like a time Roomba. It basically will just continue down the path of the deck, but not just deck. We're also moving into the commercial big ground slab environment. So, kind of spinning it back, I guess, to non-pitchy of what we do. Definitely you guys are hitting the productivity. So I think everybody's hearing about labor productivity. One of the things I'm really excited to start watching in this robotic renaissance or revolution is we are seeing a new workforce kind of get created. This is hard. You hear the dull, dirty, dangerous, right? Those are kind of the three criteria when you start looking at what is a good solution to be roboticized. This one definitely hits those marks. And we have guys out there, I don't know how it is in here in Canada, I apologize, but our average construction worker in the US right now is approximately 53 years old. Average retirement age where they cannot use their bodies is coming up to about 58. That's a scary gap because nobody's coming in. So I think one of the things we're really trying to help is safety, but career longevity, essentially, because once we start introducing these robotic solutions, we can still capture their knowledge of how they can do the process, but now they're using technology to get it done.
Yeah, I did some foundation work in my 20s, and that is some backbreaking work. Time
It's not fun.
Yeah,
It is not fun.
So that's great. So some of that kind of just longevity, being able to actually make it maybe a little bit more easier and more productive as well. Great. So kind of jumping to the next thing, for really some of this automation and the field technology to become more mainstream, curious to know from the panel here, what are some of the challenges or the unique hurdles that we have to overcome on projects? I mean, you can't just show up with one of these machines on the job site, right?
Yep.
There's a lot of prep, probably work, alignment, those kind of things. I wanted to hear from the panel, really, what is going to really make it a successful implementation?
Yeah,
Sorry.
so Justin with Hilti again. First off, you want to make the change. We deal with a lot of presentations and marketing, the C-suite individuals, and then my tenure asking them, well, what budget do you have to implement this technology on any of your job sites? And then, well, no, that's the PMs. They deal with that. You quickly realize that up top, A lot of people want to change, or a lot of people want to implement change. They see the value that you're going to add, but they don't want to pay for it. They don't want to mitigate any risks further downstream for their project managers. And we've got to start that sales cycle all over again for that project manager themselves. Luckily, we're 3 years into it now with the Hilti JBot. We've got best practices. We've got customers like DPR who are on their 5th implementation now. They have taught us, and we have learned together through the industry, how do we mitigate the unions? How do we deal with them and keep them happy at the same time? Make sure they're represented through the robot doing a piece of their work. And we've learned some great best practices from our customers and how to deal with it and have some options that come up. But to summarize, I used to sell fire stop at Hilti, and it was, you got to get in, before the shovel hits the dirt if you're going to win that. Well, as soon as you're bidding something as a GC or even a sub to an owner, are you thinking about automating? Are you thinking about prefabrication and offsite fabrication? Are you thinking about these things? And then are you putting it in your subcontractors' tenders when they are going to bid it to come to work for you, that it is an expectation that your layout will be provided and we'll make sure your union is represented? Is it an expectation that the overhead drilling will be done by the robot, but we'll make sure that your union is represented in however that you see fit? And once we've gotten to that part, and it took 3 years to get there, now it's working. Now we're getting 20 times productivity from a robot that costs the same amount as one person per day with one operator. But it's taken a long time to get there. And we've got a handful that I could name that are there. And we've got 99.9% that aren't quite there. But as a Hilti, we're agnostic. We're a company of best practices, and we're happy to reiterate that. But you got to be willing to change, and you got to be willing to invest and take that risk when it comes down to it.
Anybody
Yeah,
else?
I mean, we were just talking a little bit before, is like how we've kind of been going through all these growing pains together. So, kind of to go along, what you guys have achieved is what we're experiencing is, and I'd like to break it down in essentially 3-step process to a robotic adoption path for contractors. And what we're seeing is you got to get it in first as a concept, to what your point is. You have to have it in your head. What do you want to achieve? Do you even have a problem? Because if you don't have a problem, then tech's probably not going to be the best solution for you. Technology, true robotic solutions that can assist you in your development are those that have been designed to address a specific problem. So get that concept in your head. Be willing to test it out. I know, like, we did test drives. I know we were talking about the test drive, right? Basically, I'll put it on your site for free. If you don't like it, send it home. Try out technology. And we're not just talking about ours. It's any technology in your process. So once you get that concept and you get that buy-in at the higher level, then you got to get your crew to accept it. And that's kind of what you were talking about, is we have to go with unions. We have to work with the workers. This is going to steal our jobs. This is taking this away from me. So how do we work with that? And then the next step is true cultural adoption, which is DPR is doing, which is, all right, if you throw a robotic solution onto your thing, you can gain X efficiencies. Once you actually start rethinking how to redo your process to accommodate, and not only just accommodate, optimize the power of the robotics, if you get that buy-in all the way at the estimating, at the specs, at the DOTs, on heavy highway, but your version of it, that's where we're going to succeed. That's where this technology is going. It's just who's up front.
If I could just jump in quickly. You're talking about challenges. So they're a little more, I think you were talking about adoption and how you change the organization to embrace and deploy. When you get kind of boots on the ground and you're getting into those deployment stages, for us, we need good data. And I think automation in general needs good data. So pushing some of that thinking that's currently taking place in the field, some of those 55-year-old workers that are going to be gone in a couple of years, trying to bring them into the office where they can extend their careers and they can apply that knowledge in a more comfortable setting, bringing that upstream into the model to add a layer of detail, add some additional information into that model, do some of the problem solving so the model, the data that we're relying on is sound and reliable and something that we can carry into the field is really important for us. And then having starting reference points on the job is also really important. So our two biggest vulnerabilities when we're doing automated layout, quality of data, garbage in equals garbage out. If you give me a terrible design, I'm going to print a terrible layout. It's going to look exactly like you designed it, but it's not going to work. And then I need to know where 0, is on the slab. And that's not Bobby going out with a laser and estimating where 0 is. I need something I can trust that automation is, the robots do exactly what you tell them to do.
Yep.
And they do it repeatably and consistently. They don't really make mistakes. And our goal is to use robots and automation for what robots are good at and free up people to do what people are good at. People are really good at solving problems. Let's do that upstream and let the robot execute.
Great point.
Yeah, that's great feedback. Would you guys be willing to share some just examples of maybe some from our early adopters where you're seeing some success, where you're really truly like, I'm not saying share anybody's secret sauce per se, but just some lessons learned, some great success stories that you could share, that implementation in practice. I mean, this is not bleeding technology anymore, emerging technology. These are things that are really being adopted already.
I can jump in. So my head goes to two places. Early adoption. A lot of contractors like to position themselves as technologically progressive, that maybe they have an innovation team. They've put some videos out. I've got an interesting example with two very similarly sized general contractors working in the same market. One was very vocal about how technologically progressive they were. The other one was much, much more modest and didn't really hype it up that much. And when it came down to actual support in the implementation phase, this was early stage for us. We weren't perfect. That more modest contractor was way more supportive, patient, understanding. They didn't expect perfection. Yep. They weren't looking for that video content. They were looking to, frankly, help us refine the platform and also to learn from us how to work together to deliver this. So I would say when it comes to early adoption, it's not necessarily how you're perceived publicly. It's, are you expecting perfection, or are you patient enough to try things, recognizing they're probably not perfect yet? And this is 2 years ago for us, but it was a really valuable learning lesson. And more recently, we've seen some tremendous success with owners and clients that are committed to building the model, especially in an over-engineered facility. Anything where there's prefabricated components going in, anything where there's equipment that's going to be installed, and they spend a lot of time really refining their design, and they're committed to that, and they want to build the design perfect. We fit brilliantly into that setup and scenario, and they're seeing dramatic double-digit percentages of reduction in their installation time. So we're talking 15-20% reduction in installation time because they're getting the information they need where they need it.
Yeah. By the way, I have to give you some credit for the term innovation theater.
Yeah.
People aren't doing it just for that, for the video, right? They're actually going for the implementation and the ROI. So yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Joe.
Just to add on that too, who owns what? Like we get hit with that all the time. And when I tell you the price of the robot is the price of a person, but you need another person to run it, and it's going to give you 20x or 10x on a bad day, in my mind, that's the easiest salesman napkin math I could possibly present to somebody. There's nothing else at Hilti I could show you that's going to give you a 10x return, really. Nothing whatsoever. But then that piece of, well, who owns it? Who's going to operate it? Who's going to pay for it? That's the part that we get stuck in a lot. And then we've partnered with good, forward-thinking general contractors and construction managers who understand, if I can have my MEPs be 10x or 20x faster, it's worth $1,200 a day to have a robot on this job site. I'm going to get that return. That being said, it's hard to do that after the fact. So again, I make fun of, well, there's a shovel in the dirt, I can go sell this or that. That was the Hilti mentality. If you're talking to an owner, we'll help you present how you're going to automate your process when you're talking to that owner. We've done that. We've done that with some big high-level customers that you do jobs for at the end of the day. And then that way it's understood who owns it and who's going to accept that change and who's going to accept those minor costs, but increase that productivity to that level. The other point I want to make here is the guest list here is awesome. I think every other person had VDC in their title. It's the first time I've been to a show where there's that much investment I'm seeing in those people that can sit in front of a screen and understand this is what this model is going to look like. Therefore, this building is what this model is going to look like at the end of the day. Having a GC or CM who's invested in that area to then support maybe some of your subs that aren't quite where you guys are. Let's be honest. I used to manage the total station business at Hilti, and we were taking people a year ago with paper plans and teaching them how to lay out digitally. We still do that. You might have some of those subs win business on your jobs, and you are going to have to pull them along. Hopefully you can vet them out if at all possible, but if you're unable to vet them out, do you have a company that supports your VDC and the growth of that so you can really digitize that and help these efficiencies further downstream? And sometimes it's hard to see that. Another headcount's expensive. Talk about labor shortage. There's a lot of labor shortage when it comes to modelers and BIM professionals and CAD and VDC employees. But an investment there, it is going to increase it further downstream.
Absolutely. I mean, I could share one example, I think, from just a DPR perspective. We were doing a 10-story life sciences building in Seattle with different clients on every floor. So you can imagine different unique layouts for MEP overhead, right? So we saw the return on investment after 2 weeks, over 5,000 holes being drilled because they were all over the place. We were able to eliminate scissor lifts, create safer worker environments. So, it's not going to fit. It's not for every job,
That's
right?
it.
Obviously, you
Yep.
got to start with the problem, as you mentioned earlier, and then there are unique solutions to those, and you can see the return on investment for sure. Let's before we open it up for questions to the audience here, let's kind of wrap it up. Maybe just where do you see the most future potential for our industry, right? So we've kind of maybe gotten across the hurdles of the early adopters, but where do you see the most potential? Like, what industries do you see really embracing this, the technology? Is there unique trades that are more better for this, or unique core markets, or what kind of industries where you see this really being applied in larger scale?
Well, I mean, construction's right for it. I mean, overall, you see different levels of adoption and forward thinking at different levels of the organizations, and as well as, whether it's commercial or heavy highway. I think what we're probably most excited about is conquering the wild. So you have this on-site, this is an on-site robotics discussion, right? Then you have the off-site robotics, which probably are a little bit more advanced. So I think understanding how these machines, how these tools of the trade can start assisting crew members in the field. The adoption is right here in this industry. We're only, between the three of us, we're only hitting this much of our total end-to-end process, right? You think about your whole process. So start expanding that across the entire value chain. And how do we start automating those? And then how do we identify how those work with people? Because at the end of the day, robotics will always need at least one person. And it's how do you make that the most efficient opportunity that you can capture knowledge that can't be regained, that we can move forward and use the tools that can take care of the dull, dirty, tedious task. So I'm pretty confident we're in the right industry for adoption. I think we've just reached a cusp. You think about how did the guys with the shovels feel when the first excavator come out, right? That's what we're looking at. And you wouldn't even think twice of not having an excavator. So it's here. It's now. We are in the industrial revolution of a construction industry, my belief. So I like where we're going.
I get a lot of people that say, wow, this is the future.
Oh,
And then I get a few people that are like, I'm not ready for the future just yet. So I think just piggybacking on some of your comments, I think you can segment this industry in a million different ways. Looking at it geographically, there are definitely more sophisticated markets where we're doing more coordination, more advanced modeling. That's often related to the cost of labor in a given market. I grew up in Boston and now live in Houston. They are dramatically different. We do work in both regions, and it couldn't be more different. The sophistication of the players and the people involved. Now, that doesn't mean that a new build on a hospital in Houston isn't getting coordinated and we're not doing modeling. What we are on certain projects in Houston, but it's not as broadly adopted. So I think there's a geographic element to it. I think there's a project type element to it. I think being disciplined with this is a good fit, this is probably not a good fit is really important for us. Because if we force it on a project that's not a great fit, it's not going to go brilliantly well, and they're not going to have a great experience. So that's an element to it. Prefabrication, I'm super excited about because we can put prefabricated panels, hangers, we can print all that information right there. It's billed by number. And especially in a market where the skill and the capabilities of the craft labor are not where you want to see them, we can solve a lot of those problems by simplifying the installation, and prefabrication dovetails really nicely in with what we're doing in the field.
Just to add on to that too, where it's going to go tomorrow, it's hard to predict. I can look at Hilti's past, and a lot of times we came out with solutions to problems and it became its own business. 20 years ago, subcontractors didn't own a core rig. They would contract that out to a diamond pro who would come core all their holes for them. Now they do it themselves. I can see this, and we have this in Australia with our robot in particular, where it's a specialized customer. They bought 2 of them, and they do it as a business. They know it costs them in that market $15 per hole to drill overhead. They know they can do it for $5. They charge $10 and make $5 and make everybody else happy. I think there's an opening for that, but it's scary to think of, and it'd be scary to take that first step. So what we're working on today is forward-thinking general contractors and construction managers who understand their schedule coming in on time and under budget and under time with less of the labor that they're unable to get even through their sub-trades are where we're partnering going forward. I was in the initial marketing for JBot, and we just took a shotgun and said, whoever wants to go for it, let's partner with them and we'll see what happens. 3 years later, we're saying no to more customers than yes, because they're not there. They're not at a good spot. They aren't digitally aligned. They're working for general contractors that maybe aren't as well too. They don't know how to deal with the unions, even though we're giving them best practices. And we're potentially setting them up for failure. We've done that as well too. Implementations, and we stand there for 3 days waiting for a point file with the robot sitting there. We're not doing that anymore. We're not putting it on the truck until we have a collaborative, point file that we're able to work from the day that we get there to make sure it's a seamless implementation.
If I could just jump on something, you touched on I think there are some questions around what is the right service model for bringing automation into the real world. You talked about Australia, and these 2 guys have kind of set up that middle layer, right? They're the service provider. And in my particular segment with layout, there are 3 main competitors. We're all approaching it a little bit differently. This will likely evolve over time. I don't think anyone has all of the answers on how we should implement the automation on the job site. So that's something I'm excited to be a part of and watch evolve. And we've got a hypothesis and we're moving forward with that, but we may have to be flexible at some point and adjust.
Yeah, I mean, I think it also varies a little bit on, especially in the U.S. market. I mean, someone like a DPR who's a self-performed contractor, and we have a lot of in-house labor and resources to implement these kind of things. It's more probably a train-the-trainer approach versus traditional CM. It's, hey, we just come here and do this for us as a service. We'll buy it out and happy to do it that way as well. So there's definitely room for different models. But anything else? Danielle, you had to add? I mean, we can open it up to the...
No, I'd like to actually hear what but
absolutely.
We can sit up here and yap all day. I'd much rather see if anybody has questions.
Yeah. Let's go ahead.
You guys all have pretty specific point solutions.
Yep.
You all agree with that? So is your longer term strategy more point solutions or individual machines that do more?
Yeah.
And then I guess the longer term is so Boston Dynamics, a humanoid robot or an android,
Here we go.
Here we go, Spot.
it can tie rebar eventually.
Can it?
Eventually.
Can it?
Is that the goal for you guys, or is it more solution?
I can speak to where we're going. I won't go.
I'll take the Boston Dynamics question if you want.
I know.
I'll fall on that.
I have to be nice. No, so I actually love where you just went. We are of the belief, I am of the belief, especially, and keep in mind, we're in a horizontal rebar. So it is such a long process for the concrete. We really do focus on reinforced concrete installation. I would much rather figure out how to complete the value chain and autonomize a majority of that, but stay targeted. Because again, if I solve 50% of a 2% problem, not so hot. If I can save 50% of 50% of the problem, that I think is where construction and automation needs to go. And then you can move on to the next. So you may see separate products. You may see additions or attachments that can help. We have to watch where the process is and address where the labor shortages are really truly occurring. So we spend a lot of time analyzing that. We do a lot of data studies on installation process.
I think you need to focus on the problem first and build the solution for the problem.
100%.
I love Boston Dynamics. I think they are an amazing company, really pushing the boundaries of what technology and automation and robotics can do. But in my opinion, that's a hammer looking for a nail, where we have focused on the nail and what does it take to smack that thing down in one shot. So we have always approached it as find the problem, find that unmet need, and fix that. And I think that's the right way to introduce robotics into an industry. A humanoid robot will be a good generalist, but I don't think it'll do anything especially well. So we look at point solutions.
Yeah. I can hire a laborer, go walk around a building and take photos for half the price, fraction of the price, right? To automate progress tracking, for example, right? So there's that fine balance between the ROI as well, right? Yeah.
Can you somersault?
The videos are impressive. And then, honestly, they almost do robotics a disservice because people, when we come out onto a job site, compared to what Spock can do, our robot is boring. It just moves around and prints and like, is that it? Like the first 5 minutes are super exciting, and then they're like, okay, I'm gonna go back to my
Which
job.
is to me the greatest compliment you can give us is this thing's boring.
Yeah.
It's doing what it's supposed to do.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, this is Amir from Autodesk. So great presentation. I just had a two-part question. So one is around the adoption strategy that you mentioned. So I'm curious to know if your strategy is the owners, or do you kind of focus on the trades so that trades get certified? Maybe you have training programs or get them pre-certified so they offer this as an asset. And the second part of the question is that who owns this machinery generally? Is it the trades or is it GC that kind of purchases and have this?
Yeah. I'll speak to that one if you don't mind. Again, we started out with a shotgun approach. Whoever wanted to try it out, we were not going to say no to them, right? And from that, we learned very quickly that's probably not the best way. We've then partnered with general contractors and construction managers before they were presenting to the owner of the project. We can present to them prefabricated solutions that we've had success with in other areas. We can present to them automation. And then another big part of it is our carbon neutrality, which we're very proud of at Hilti as well, too, to be carbon neutral in 2023. So we can then help those GCs and those CMs better present themselves. All they had to do was ask, and we're going to provide them the content and help them do that. That being said, if you're a plumber and you have 50,000 holes to drill overhead, when do you want me there? I'll be there. Let's go. Like, you can't do that manually the way you needed to before. But am I going to get repeat business there? Am I going to get the real ROI? Are they going to have somebody who knows control to establish control? Or now am I going to be on? There's lots of watchouts from us in our 3 years of past learnings, but we have certificates we print out and give to employees after the fact. I spent 2.5 days on that Seattle project 2 times myself, and we trade the sub-trade to represent the union for the applications that they needed to cover, and then they left with a certificate in hand to say, I'm a JBot operator. I thought that was pretty cool. There's a piece of paper at the end of the day, but they thought it was as well too. And what that allows us to do is to make sure everybody's happy. Right? We want to make sure everybody's covered, but at the same time, we talked a lot about productivity. What we're able to really cover as well too is the safety piece. I talk about 20x. That's also 20 people not on ladders, 20 people's not on scissor lifts, 20 people not doing overhead work with silica dust in their face, which we can mitigate. We've got the onboard vacs for the, drills and stuff, but can we not make that work more appealing to the new generation coming in and take this grunt stuff and let a plumber go be a plumber? Make sure those pipes are working. Make sure the electricity is on. Make sure you're getting it to the right room. That's what we think is more rewarding for those trade members.
Or like for my son, put those Xbox skills into use, right?
There you go. Mario Kart is how I.
Yeah.
I have two little girls. I have a 5 and a 6-year-old, both little girls, and they call me a construction worker, and I couldn't be more proud of that. And if I unlock this industry to them and they can see the rewards of working in this sector, I would be a very, very proud dad. I already am, but like, if they want to chase this career, we can unlock that for them. Fantastic.
This is more of a selfish question, I guess. All I keep hearing about is after the slab's been poured, your robot will come in and drill the hole.
Absolutely.
Are there, again, I apologize if this has already been discussed, but why is that robot not on the fly form marking the sleeve locations?
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff in the way. Short answer.
Okay, so then when it comes back to these robotics, having cored millions of holes in my lifetime, we always had to bring in a different team to x-ray the slab.
Yeah.
To where that rebar is.
Yep.
We're not there yet, but
Yep.
No matter how you guarantee you're not going to nick rebar,
So luckily, I know a lot about anchors from working at Hilti, and
use Hilti primarily.
I'm
We
glad to
set
hear
all
it.
on our fly forms and then drop the forms.
I'm glad to hear it.
And coring to us was like, that's your last option.
So we don't cover all of it, but we can tell you best practices. In Seattle, let's 3D scan this slab before we pour the concrete on it. Now I know where all the post tension is. I can overlay that on the floor, the BIM model itself, and then they go through and red X, do not drill here. Or we're going to use 3/4.
Still human error. Like if the model shows your rebar's tied like this, you have this much cover, you have that. Is there a check to make sure that those rebar, your top layer, your bottom layer?
I mean, I'd say the check would be the 3D scan itself, right?
Okay, and
So,
you're confident in that?
if they scanned it,
Yeah.
yes,
So
that's reality.
aren't doing that yet? That's still-
No, not all together. No, 100%.
Just a personal story.
No, hey, I appreciate it. That's real life, though. This is where we usually get after the fact. Hey, I got a project. How do you deal with that? And I'm happy to answer in front of the group. And it might be a point where we say, if you got so much post tension there, unless you're going to scan it all first, this might not be the right solution for you, right? You might have to have somebody come in and scan and make sure, okay, it's overlaid. But then we can also take that scan and put that in the 3D model as well, too. If you don't appreciate the pre-pour scan, we'll have a 3D scan. We can do a GPR scan with you, and we've got the products to help you support that as well, too.
Yeah, so just telling you a little background from mine. As far as I know, we're from Waterloo. We were one of the first companies in Canada, I believe, to put sprinklers in the slabs.
Okay.
We had a bulkheadless project.
Yep.
So all the sprinkler heads came like everything, piping, everything, all came pre-assembled basically on U-channel bars.
Yep.
Got set on the rebar. We had flags everywhere while everyone was pouring the slabs and nobody was stepping on heads and things like that.
Yeah.
I just remember walking onto that and just the fly forms being an open slate
Yep.
before bottom bar got tied.
Yep.
Is that an opportunity to get that robot on there and start laying out some of that stuff, or is it just it's just too fast of a pace when they're flying forms every 4 days?
I'm going to try to give you the political answer. It's on the product roadmap.
Jeez.
Listen, hey, my CEO spoke earlier, and he avoided saying what's coming in the future. So I'm sure Zach not going to say what's coming in the future, but I've got a little bit of insight there. And so that's the Hilti political answer. It's on the product. That's it. Couldn't agree more. Right? Couldn't agree more. Yep.
Yeah.
No worries. Good one.
Okay. I think we got time for maybe one more, two questions, but yeah, go ahead.
My question is to you, Danielle.
Yes.
So, what data do you feed to your robots? Because I know on most projects the rebars have been modeled in 3D. So, how do you go about that?
I am so glad you asked that because it is it's definitely something that we are looking for. It is interesting that the industry has not hit that portion. All of our robots are zero pre-programming, no BIM input. So they are purely autonomous. They come up, they get set on the site, takes about, TieBot's about an hour and a half. IronBot's a little bit bigger. You basically let it know where its area of work is, where it is in its environment, and you start it. We run completely autonomous from any input. So but we want to go there. So you're exactly right. I would actually, I'd love to find out why we're not AutoCAD. We got to talk, it's
It's a good one. That's good.
my origin was from data, kind of following up. I don't know if you guys saw the keynote today, but there's data, and then there's good data, and then there's knowledge, and that is powerful. So you guys have already gotten so far. I walked around the room upstairs. I was just amazed. We don't have that yet, but definitely we are prepping for it. We understand it. We're looking forward to it so that the solutions will be able to understand and cross-reference as soon as that is available. So, but as of right now, we do not need data. We just need to get on the bar.
Great.
Yeah, so I have a related question to you. So, have you ever heard about questions about liability? So you are now tying and laying down rebars, which if there's something later on goes wrong, a robot have done this, correct? So who would be liable on that? Have you ever heard this question from anyone?
Absolutely. You guys are just feeding me on the roadmap. So currently we have, we've actually named the people that go out with our robots. They're just robot supervisors. We don't call them operators because that's a union. That's a whole different world. So we call them robot supervisors. Currently, the robot supervisor is responsible for quality control, essentially. But our main goal is we try and get these out to the end users or the GCs themselves. So you have their rod busters doing it. So they're multitasking. So the general contractor, the subcontractor is still liable. TieBot or IronBot is not really in a position of liability. What I do want to get to is one step further. Could you imagine if we could remove the inspection process and the mess if something is tied, placed, or done incorrectly, especially after concrete pour, is disastrous. So there we go, AutoCAD, getting some data. Now we can start figuring out, feed in those models. Could you imagine having a consistency plan delivered at your doorstep within 15 minutes, within 30 minutes, within an hour, or at the end of the day? So yes, and if you're ever in Pittsburgh, come on and come down and talk to the engineers because we are actively looking at how to figure this out.
Great. Okay, we still probably have, I think we got to wrap it up because there's other sessions that start, but really thank you, panel, for all your expertise and input, and appreciate you asking some questions as well. It's very, very informative, and thank you all. We'll let you go on to your next sessions.
Thank you, Dan.